Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 972 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, I'll be speaking with Karen. She's an Air Force veteran, a doctor practicing family medicine. She has type 1 diabetes and Hashimoto's. While you're listening today, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Interested in getting started with Dexcom? Dexcom.com/juicebox. Want to save 40% off of comfortable sheets, clothing, and towels? CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. If you're looking for a free year's supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first order, drinkag1.com/juicebox. Links to all of the sponsors are in the show notes of the audio app you're listening in right now and at juiceboxpodcast.com. When you click on my links, you are in fact supporting the show, and I cannot thank you enough for that. I do have some time left here, so let me remind you about the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes, 40,000 members, and climbing every day. There's a conversation happening right now that you would love. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Omnipod, makers of the Omnipod DASH and the Omnipod 5. Use my link to get started, omnipod.com/juicebox. Omnipod is tubeless and reliable, and the insulin pump that my daughter has been using for 15 years. Omnipod.com/juicebox. The podcast is also sponsored today by another device that I see around my house, the Contour meters. Oh, goodness me. Today's episode is sponsored by the Contour Next Gen Blood Glucose Meter. ContourNext.com/juicebox. A meter should be a couple of things. It should have a bright light. It should be accurate. It should be easy to hold and easy to read. If you agree, then you also want a Contour meter. ContourNext.com/juicebox.
Hey everyone, my name is Karen. I always say I'm the good kind, not the bad kind. I am 27 years old. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 23. I am currently in my second year of training in family medicine. So I'm basically in my specialty training. I am a doctor. I'm also an Air Force veteran and married to an active duty Air Force officer who's currently stationed in Las Vegas. And yeah, that's me.
All right. So you're 27. You're an Air Force vet. You've had diabetes for about 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
You already have your MD, but you're still working towards it, or you are, or like, where are you at in that training? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I went to 4 years of medical school. So I graduated 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you complete medical school, you generally do a couple years of specialty training in a specific area of medicine. So some people will go into surgery, some people go into pediatrics, some people go into internal medicine. My specialty is family medicine. So we like to say we take care of all age, basically from birth to grave is the whole age group that we take care of. So I have the pleasure of getting to take care of members of an entire family, which is just a really unique part of our specialty. So I am an MD, but I'm in my second year of family medicine training.
This seems brilliant to me. Almost like, it's funny that the parallel, I was about to choose, I need to pick a different one. Hold on. I was going to, almost like an online model, like a business model. Like, have you ever heard somebody say, like, look, I don't need 20,000 customers. I just need 1,500 people who come see me every month. And so, like, you might end up with like a smaller group of people, but actually stay with them for their whole life. Is that about how that ends up going?
That is potentially how it can end up going if you stay in the same area for a long period of time. Some of my more senior like faculty members have taken care of families for like 40 or 50 years. And,
wow,
you know, they take care of grandma, they take care of mom, and then even, you know, mom's babies. And so you can literally take care of multiple generations in a family.
I can see the benefit in that too. Like just off the top of my head, if your grandmother has hyperthyroidism and you come in and you're showing signs of it, the doctor might like kind of like light up a bulb in their head faster than if you just came in and they didn't know any of your family history like that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. What made you choose that? I mean, what made you want to be a doctor, I guess, first of all?
Yeah, so I think it's like a really long story, but coming out of high school, I always had more of a personality trait of caring for others and really wanting to take care of others.
Mm-hmm.
And that just kind of slowly developed over my time when I was in college. And now it's just more so like I really just enjoy taking care of people from a health perspective and helping people live the happiest life that they can live through their health is what brings me a lot of pleasure and joy. And I think that's one of the reasons why I went into medicine, because in my opinion, as we kind of get older, a lot of things that prevent us from really enjoying life to the fullest is our health, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Some people struggle with chronic pain as they get older or chronic disease. And if I can help people live a better and healthier life so that they can have a happy, more functional life as they get older, that just brings me a lot of pleasure and happiness.
Yeah. It's obviously the answer you're hoping for when you ask somebody the question, not like, well, Scott, I enjoy being in power. And,
right.
and I know for sure, because I know a handful of doctors, they wouldn't tell anybody to become a doctor at this point. So it wasn't because people were telling you it's great to get into, right?
Yeah, I mean, we work a lot of hours, we obtain a lot of debt.
And the
so
insurance.
There's lots of reasons.
Insurance.
Yes, that's true.
Oh my God.
But I'm lucky, family medicine, we actually don't have to deal with that very often. We're one of like the specialties that deal with that issue the least often.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay. So
I think
oh, I'm sorry. I spoke over you.
Oh, no. I think it's just because we have a really good continuity of care with our patients. Mm-hmm. So we know them, they know us. So I feel like that is probably a contributing factor. But
explain to me, you graduate from high school. Do you go right into the Air Force?
Yeah. So I went to one of the military academies. I went to Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with the Naval Academy or West Point?
I've seen a lot of movies and television shows where they talk about them. So yes, I'm familiar enough.
So essentially that's where I went to. That's where I got my college degree from. I essentially went to a military college, is kind of the way you can put it, and one of the main officer training programs into the Air Force.
Okay.
In addition to like ROTC. So that's where I went, and my college was paid for. I had to like wear a uniform to class every day. We had to like march in formation, but I had lots of other really cool opportunities there that you just wouldn't get anywhere else in the world. Yeah, that's where I went, and I got my commission there and graduated, got my degree in biology, got a scholarship to medical school, and kind of went from Air Force to medical school here in North Carolina.
How long are you in the Air Force for? Or are you still active or?
No, so that was the diabetes is what ultimately
ended
my Air Force journey. Yeah.
What am I thinking? They booted your ass right out of there.
They did.
Yeah. Okay.
So I made it into my second year of medical school. And that's when I kind of started noticing that something wasn't right. And that's when I was diagnosed. And I went through about 1.5 to 2 years of the medical evaluation board in the Air Force, where, if something like this comes up, they like put you through a whole process where they see if you can, even be in the military anymore. Mm-hmm. I think my process was prolonged because of COVID.
Okay.
Yeah. And also I was in a weird reserve status at the time. So it wasn't as clean as a process if I was on active duty.
Before the diabetes, was it your intention to stay in the reserves after you served your time?
I mean, it was definitely my intention to be in the active duty Air Force as like a military doctor.
Oh, okay.
That was my intention. So I would have graduated from medical school, gone from reserve status back to active, done my residency in family medicine, but would have done it through the Air Force.
Karen, I've heard this story a number of times, and This is the first time it didn't make sense to me. Why the heck couldn't you be a doctor with type 1 diabetes? Like, just don't send you to a war zone if they're that worried. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Did you make that argument?
I did make that argument.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the way the military views it is, I mean, what's an important part of, our military is being prepared to go on deployments. And unfortunately, being on insulin makes you not deployable because they out in the field can't safely keep insulin refrigerated. What happens
Karen,
if you
I hear the argument,
have an event?
Yeah, but come on. One of you has to stay back in Colorado and take care of people or whatever. I don't like this argument at all. Okay, that's fine. They'll miss you.
Yeah, I think some things may change into the future. I think I heard that there is an Air Force Academy graduate who got diagnosed with type 1 when he was at the academy, who ended up commissioning. So I think things are changing. I was jealous, but I mean, he was in a different position than I was. He had a lot more resources and leadership support to kind of help him get through that versus I kind of went through this entire process on my own because I was basically kind of a civilian at the time that this all happened, although I was still considered a member of the Air Force.
Okay. So you're in like halfway through medical school when you get diagnosed. How does it present? And I'm dying to know how much of your, education helped you or if you were just as lost as everybody else when you were being diagnosed.
Yeah. So I will say I was completely lost. People think you're really smart if you're in medical school, but it's surprising like how much you don't know. And I'm still learning as much as I'm learning now. But so essentially, I was diagnosed in August of 2018. So it's just at the beginning of my second year. And that summer, I was thinking about it before I was talking to you. I just did not feel right that entire summer prior to August. At first kind of noticed just like some changes to my exercise tolerance. Just seemed to be getting fatigued more quickly. And I was like, well, maybe I'm just like really, really out of shape. Who knows? So I kind of was dealing with that for, I'm not sure, maybe about 2 months. And then I went and did some training up in Ohio for my Air Force stuff because I was required to complete some training. And I did get a really, really bad viral cold there. I know, classic story. Got back from that training, went home to my parents' house in California and came back and was, getting medical school started back again. We kind of had a small break and still having like tiredness. Then, it started feeling more thirsty. And I was like, well, it's the fan in my room. It's July in North Carolina. Of course I'm thirsty.
Karen, the fan's drying you out. Is that where you went to?
Yes.
Yeah. That's funny.
And of course I started peeing more because I'm drinking so much water.
Because of the damn fan.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the hunger started. I was eating a lot. I was like, well, this is so great. I'm hungry and I'm not gaining weight. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And then it was like 2 weeks into August, I noticed I stepped on the scale one day. I was like, wow, I've lost 15 pounds. That is not normal. And all I've been doing is eating and continuing my normal lifestyle. So that does not make any sense.
Does that put your brain towards cancer once you finally start? Yeah, it's what happens, right? You think I'm losing weight and I shouldn't be. Oh God, I have cancer.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
right.
Ironically, we were in the cancer unit of my medical school education. So I was terrified.
You're like, guess what, everybody? Gonna get some firsthand experience off of Karen in a second. And so you go to the doctor? This is interesting. Do you go to the doctor or do you try to figure it out on your own?
So I did go to the doctor. I went to my family medicine primary care doctor, and I thought it was my thyroid because we didn't know until after I was diagnosed with type 1 that I was Hashimoto's, but I had hypothyroidism that I was diagnosed with when I was at Air Force. And so I was like, oh, maybe my thyroid is like really active, and that must have caused my 15-pound weight loss.
Well, you know what? That's reasonable. I mean, I don't know about 15 pounds, but it's reasonable to think that your weight got knocked off course by thyroid. So, okay. All right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I went and we checked my thyroid, and that was that was fine. And another 2 days went by, and by this time it's a Friday, and something just wasn't sitting right with me. So I was at school and I was telling my friends about what was going on, and kind of had like a little bit of a breakdown because I was really scared.
Sure.
And we went and we were calling a bunch of clinics around town, trying to find a clinic that was open for me to go see somebody. And of course, I mean, I will, agree with this. Friday afternoons to get into a doctor's office, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up talking to one of the school administrator people who was one of the family doctors nearby. And I told her what was going on. And she's like, does diabetes run in your family? And I was like, no, it does not. And I'm like, I sure hope that's not what's going on, because I'm going to get kicked out of the Air Force. And she's like, oh, okay. Like, I don't think that's what's going on. I think she was just trying to reassure me. And she ended up holding one of the residents at the family medicine clinic that I currently train at over for like a late afternoon appointment and sent me over there. And so I got into the office. They checked my blood sugar. It was like into the 400s. And my A1C, I don't remember what it was, but it was definitely greater than 12.
Oh, wow.
When they checked it in the office.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sucks. And so right away, I don't have cancer, but I'm out of the Air Force.
Yeah, and that was legitimately my first thought. And I said the F word, and I called it was Max, I'm married to now, but he was my boyfriend at the time. Mm-hmm. Called him immediately, and I couldn't imagine what it must have felt like for him to be on the receiving end of that phone call, because I was very upset and wasn't even thinking about what my health was that this was very serious. Because I didn't know. Like, I was told my blood sugar was over 400. I'm like, well, what does that mean? And she's like, that's really high. but yeah.
Was it, I don't know. You were probably so overwhelmed. This is going to be a stupid question, but I mean, was there ever a moment when you thought, Jesus, I'm in medical school and I didn't know about any of this?
I think about that a lot now. I'm like, how did I not know about this?
But not in the moment, right?
Right. And I will say, I hadn't had my endocrinology block yet. I had it later, but yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea what a high or a low blood sugar was. The first year of medical school is much more basic sciences based versus clinical based. So I had no context for any of that information.
Yeah. In fairness, Arden's going to fashion school, and she said, I don't think anything about fashion is happening in my first year of college. And so not much different, right? You're getting the basics down and the whole thing. And was he your boyfriend at that point?
Yeah, see, we had been together, I think, for about 3 years at that time.
Okay. So he very uniquely understands the loss of the Air Force, whereas somebody else who's not serving wouldn't have.
Right.
And was there ever conversations like, oh, we'll stay in the Air Force together? Did it kind of put a wrench in what you were thinking about doing beyond the obvious stuff? Let's dig right in. ContourNext.com/juicebox. You want, you need, and you deserve an accurate blood glucose meter. Please look into the Contour line of meters, if you agree. ContourNext.com/juicebox. The Contour Next Gen is sponsoring this episode, and you should check it out. When you go to the link, you can learn all about the meters and those second chance test strips that they offer. My daughter loves her Contour meter, and more importantly, I love it. So I'm telling you, it's the best meter I've ever used. It's easy to use, easy to hold, easy to see. It's got a bright light for nighttime viewing, and the second chance test strips stop there from being errors and wasted strips. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Check it out today. You can actually buy your meter or your strips right there. There's a buy now button. It'll take you to, links to 8 different places online where you can look for meters and test strips. It is completely possible. Actually, it's very possible that these items, they may cost less through those links than you are paying right now through your insurance. Mind-boggling, I know, but it's worth checking into. ContourNext.com/juicebox. The contour meters are terrific. They are accurate. They are durable. And I believe you will love them. My daughter Arden has been wearing an Omnipod since she was 4 years old, and she is now 19. That is every day wearing an Omnipod for the last 15 years. I think what we love most about Omnipod is that it doesn't have any tubing. But, I don't know. Is that the thing you love most about it? You don't have to take it off to swim or bathe. You can leave it on for activity and exercise. It's small. It's so easy to put on, right? To fill it and to put it on is just, it takes us no time at all. I guess it's hard to figure out what my favorite thing about Omnipod is. I guess I'll just say that my daughter loves it. It's easy and it's worked for her for so many years. It's just such a friend in all of this. Omnipod.com/juicebox. You can check your coverage there for your insurance, or take a test drive, right? Would you like a free trial of the Omnipod? You can do that there as well. And you can just get started. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Now you have a decision to make. Do you want the Omnipod DASH, which is an insulin pump where you make all the decisions? Or do you want the Omnipod 5? Now the Omnipod 5 is the first and only tubeless automated insulin delivery system to integrate with the Dexcom G6. And it's available for people with type 1 diabetes ages 2 years and older. It features Smart Adjust technology, and it's going to help you to protect against highs and lows both day and night. That's an algorithm-based system, making decisions about insulin, giving it and taking it away. It's pretty damn cool. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. When you use those links, you're supporting the production of the podcast and helping to keep it free and plentiful.
I think we had envisioned that we were both going to do our Air Force commitments. At this point, I don't know if we would have been thinking about doing a career, but that was definitely a part of our plan, was for us to eventually, I would complete my training. I would continue with my commitment in the Air Force and he would finish up his, or we would do it together. So it did kind of change things, but ultimately, I think, in the end, if you want to look at the big picture, everything kind of works out the way it's supposed to be. And I think it would have been very difficult for both of us to stay in the Air Force in the career fields that we are.
Okay.
The Air Force, does try their very best to keep spouses and families together. If both of your jobs can be placed at the same base, but knowing what his job is, he's a pilot, and what my job would have been being a physician, it would have been, I think, kind of very difficult for us to be at the same place.
I see.
So I think, everything kind of works out for the way it's supposed to. And it's not a great way to get out of the military, but maybe that was the silver lining of it all, is it makes our lives a little bit easier.
Did it impact how you were paying for college, though?
It did.
Oh, geez. Diabetes costs you more than everybody else. Like, everybody's like, insulin's expensive. And you're like, yeah, plus medical school. Oh, wow.
Exactly.
Oh, my God. Oh, that super sucks, Karen. Oh, my God. That's terrible. Like I would have.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. You don't know. I'm so cheap. I would have been in the hospital. People would have been like, you have diabetes. My brain would have went, oh, my God, I'm out of the Air Force. Oh, my God, I got to pay for medical school. Like, I would have been like in 30 seconds to that thought. Like, oh, no. Oh, that sucks. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
No, it's not okay. What do you mean it's okay? It's horrible. It's like, half a medical school. Can you tell me where you're enrolled?
I went to Wake Forest School of Medicine.
That sounds expensive.
It was very expensive, but I had a great education.
Well, you're really hot. You're like a glasses half full person, huh?
I am.
Yeah, I would definitely be like, this is bullshit. I'm being screwed in every direction right now. Like, you didn't have any. Well, I'll ask you. You didn't have any feelings like that, or you did?
Oh, I did. I was very angry for a long time about like what happened, how like life is unfair. I had like my life planned out. I, served my country. I was going into medicine. Like, why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
So I did go through that.
Oh, I
And
just
I only really recently I only went to 2 sessions, but she was very helpful. I saw a psychologist who specializes in managing adults with chronic illness, specifically cystic fibrosis and type 1.
mhm.
And she was very helpful in kind of getting over those feelings and like coming to acceptance that my life has changed. This is my life now. We're not going backwards. All we can do is move forwards. And now I feel much more at peace
Yeah.
with what happened.
Well, that person must be a genius because I just Googled it and we're talking mid-60s a year. Am I right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Those people better get good and sick when you become their doctor and come every week.
Yes. Please come to your appointments.
Yeah, and you might be the first doctor with a tip jar out front.
Oh, goodness.
If you feel we've got an excellent service, nothing wrong with putting a 20 in the jar on your way. Karen's got bills. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. To go backwards really far for a second. The idea of calling someone a Karen is only a few years old. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Did it kind of started around the time of the lady in the park, right? Where she acted scared of a guy and the guy was like, I'm not even talking to you. And then she like flipped
Oh,
it.
he like called the police.
Yeah, like it's right around that time, I think. It's right around that time, like 2020 or so. Did that actually have an impact on your life?
Not really. So I always feel like Karen has been one of those names that people joke about a lot, mostly if you think of Mean Girls.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Oh, okay.
Have you seen that movie?
Listen, Karen, let's not make me admit on the podcast that I've seen Mean Girls, okay? But yeah, yes.
It's okay, you can admit it.
No, I've definitely seen Mean Girls, yes.
So I always feel like Karen has always been one of those names that's always kind of been on the root end of a joke. So it's been this way my entire life. But yeah, the Karen thing that happened back in the like you were saying 2020. Now I just kind of get out in front of it and people think it's funny. I'm like, I'm Karen, I'm the good kind.
Yeah.
So I get out in front of it before anybody else can own it. I just own my name.
Yeah. Why are you so pleasant? I'm being serious. I'm not being sarcastic. Like upbringing, scared of Jesus, somebody like did something happen? Like seriously, you're a really pleasant person. Why tell me how that happens.
Thank you.
No, please. Yeah, first of all, you're welcome. I think it's a hell of a compliment and I mean it. But I mean, like I'm not as pleasant as you. But why not? Like if I grew up in your house, would I have been? Is it just your disposition? Like I'm serious. You don't know, do you?
Probably a mix of, I think it's like a mix of like environment and like what I've experienced in life kind of up to this point. I feel like I've experienced a lot of different things for a 27-year-old. Upbringing for sure. I don't come from a religious background at all, but my mom always taught me to kill people with kindness.
But you're not acting. You're not acting when you're talking though. This is who you are.
No, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Like I really I prefer to treat people nicely and kindly and give people the benefit of the doubt. I feel much more happy about life if I think positively about it. I mean, there are times that I get into a place where I'm just upset and angry and mad. And that's where Max comes in. He's very helpful. But I just find that, things generally work better if you come at something with a positive attitude and try and work the problem. That's something my dad always said too.
Yeah.
He's like, well, here's what's in front of you. Find a way to work the problem. Like this didn't work, but what else might work? If
I met a person that sucked, it's a person that truly sucks. You've met somebody like that. Yeah. Could I say I'm positive that this person sucks? Or that doesn't count as being positive?
I think you could say that.
Okay. I don't think I'm not a lot of the things that you mentioned too. I don't know. There's like a cynical side of me that looks for that stuff. And it's fascinating to me when people don't do that. Like, I actually think I'm good at like a number of things because I'm always wondering on some level, like who's trying to get over here? Who's screwing us? Like what, what's the angle? Why are they saying that? And you're not encumbered by any of those thoughts.
Not so much,
yeah.
But I will say there's a disadvantage to that.
Okay.
I think there's always good. And I think there's goods and bads to all personality types, but at least you have some level of suspicion and questioning or sometimes I might just look something over and be like, all is well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's, that may be something that sometimes I don't always question and have a critical mind all the time when maybe I should.
Mm-hmm.
And so I might miss something that you might pick up on.
Yeah. Like you're having a great time in a group, and then when you leave, you realize somebody stole your shoes, and you're like, how'd that happen? And
right, exactly. I'm like, where'd my money go?
That's crazy.
Nobody stole my money.
We were just hanging out. That guy over there was smoking crack, and I don't understand what happened.
Exactly.
Yeah. He was lovely. All right. So, okay. I'm getting all this. I understand you. You have Hashimoto's, you said. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is there any other autoimmune in your family?
So none that we know of. So I also had psoriasis when I was very little. So that was the first kind of autoimmune issue that may have been like a warning sign. So I had that when I was 2, but no one else in my family that we know of has any autoimmune disorders other than myself.
Okay.
I'm a fraternal twin. She's completely fine. I also have an older sister who only 2 years older who has no issues as all that we know of.
Can I curse, Karen? Unbelievable. Are you serious?
I know, same womb, right?
I'm trying so hard to get you upset, and it's not working. But you don't want to that. Does that hurt a little bit? Damn it, no, Karen! I married the wrong girl. You are so pleasant. Jeez. Oh, God. I mean, you're way too young and everything, but still, if I could get into a time machine, I'd go try to find you at like 17. And I'd be like, hey, what's up? We should be friends because you're going to grow up to be a lovely person. And I want to be around this. Oh, my God. That's no kidding. So how about for your, twins as a sister or a brother? I forget.
Sister. So I only have sisters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do you think they feel bad?
I think they do.
Really?
Especially because a lot of these health things didn't come up until I was in college and we were all separated. Mm-hmm. So I think part of them they do feel bad. They, my family, we always make jokes to kind of, I think, lighten up the situation. They always say, well, we're so glad it's you because we couldn't do this. Like we couldn't handle the things that you have to do. You're, a strong person and, like that's all well and good. But I honestly do think they feel for my situation and all the things that I've gone through. And I think they hope that it doesn't happen to them. Mm-hmm. I hope it doesn't happen to them. But I just, I've kept them on alert. I'm like, I have these things going on. They might show up later in your life. Just be aware that we're related and if something could happen, who knows?
Karen, behind your back, they think of you as the ghost of Christmas future. And they're like, keep her out of here with those stories about what might happen to me. By the way, it's a lovely thing you're doing by keeping them abreast of what's going on. And because then they might have a chance if they do see something to see it sooner. Are you the, let's be honest here. Are you the smartest of the siblings? Or is that doctor thing doesn't necessarily make you smart?
I don't think I'm like intellectually the smartest. I think my older sister is like the smartest, mm-hmm. but I think I understand people and can really hear people out in a unique way. And that might be why I was drawn to family medicine,
right? Because
it's a lot more social and talking with people and hearing like their views about medicine and trying just to meet them where they're at. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm very good at picking up new skills and I'm very committed to what I do, which I think are all qualities that make a good physician. I mean, people will tell you don't have to be the smartest person in the room to be a good doctor. You really have to care and obviously know the medicine and other things. But I don't think I'm like intellectually the most like the smartest person in my family, although my family members might disagree just because of the academic stuff I've completed thus far.
Are you a little worried that you're going to spend the rest of your natural life fielding questions from your friends and family about their ailments?
Oh, I'm already doing it 100%. People ask you all the time where people feel like they have to come and explain their health to you.
Oh, really?
I'm like, oh, it's weird. They're like, oh, I have this going on. And they just like want to like share everything with you.
Like if you were a mechanic and their carburetor was dirty, you feel like they would be like, oh, the car's running rough. Like that kind of thing? Like you think they're telling, oh, no kidding. I have, one of my close friends is a physician. And anytime I ask him about, my first sentence is just like, hey, I'm really sorry. And I realize that everyone does this to you. And we talk about it sometimes. Mm-hmm. And he's like, everybody does it. Like, it's like everyone I know who has a question is like, hey, I'm coughing. What's going around? Or can you look at a picture of this? Or, like that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you, when you're friends with a physician, you have to really stop yourself. You know what I mean? Because it feels easy. Like, oh, well, Karen will know. I'll just text her real quick. I save them for really like moments. Yeah, if I'm asking, something's wrong. Anyway, it's going to be your whole life. You might as well just get a burner phone right now and just give it to your husband.
Yes.
Although you're not going to care. You're the nicest person I've met in the last 6 months. So have you never killed anybody? Nothing.
No.
Nothing big like that you're hiding.
No, I would try going hunting though. I think at least once, just to try it. But I've never done that. No.
I have to know. I know we haven't talked about your diabetes yet. I'm assuming we will soon. Honestly, I don't know. But what was it like being in the Air Force? Because you're commingled, right? Men and women, and you are just incredibly pleasant. And you're are you a small person, like stature wise, or no? Are you tall?
No.
You're tall, right?
I'm about 5'10".
Okay. So you're a tall person. Okay. But what's it like? Well, I mean, what's that whole thing like? Obviously there's got to be a boys club. Do you try to get into it, or you don't care about it? Are they crass and you have to be crass in return? Or like, how did that whole thing go?
I hear the boys club thing. I think that's definitely, I don't know if that's all related to the military. I feel like that's present in a lot of organizations.
Sure.
Even in medicine, I will say that you will come across that. But I'm trying to think, it's been so long since I was there, but I always felt very promoted by my leadership to pursue leadership within my squadron. I feel like the Air Force does a particularly better job at, I think, elevating women than maybe some of the other forces. I don't know if that's true. Generally a more female-friendly force, from my understanding, compared to the other ones in terms of like percentages, if you look at it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it's just because the academies are a place of like leadership development, that they do try and perform like equal opportunity between everybody. But I never felt like I had to like act differently.
Okay.
I think we all learn ways to, I'm trying to think
blend in.
Phrase. To blend in, and work how to work best with people, and how to, if I'm trying to achieve a means, how can I communicate in such a way that will get my vision across? But I think you learn that with working within a lot of different organizations, as well as how do you best communicate with people that may be different from you.
Right. Does the fact that you're dating somebody in the Air Force, does that put like a force field around you that keeps the creepy away? Maybe? Do the guys know? Like, is that something? Or no? You might not have even thought of it. Yeah. I mean,
I didn't have a serious. Max was actually my first like mostly big serious relationship, and we didn't start dating until we were juniors in college, and we were best friends for 3 years before then. Mm-hmm. I think honestly, just being kind of like a taller like person, like a taller female, or maybe just pushed away a lot of people for a while. I'm not quite sure.
Hey, that's no kidding, right? Like guys are intimidated by taller women.
Yeah, I think so.
They don't hit on you as much. They don't think of you like I'm not wrong about that, right?
I would agree with you. And also, like, when you're stuck in a military, like, you're in a military uniform all the time, your hair is up all the time, people don't always see you outside of that model, where you're kind of, everyone's like, you're doing your duties throughout the day, you look, like, it's hard to see people outside of that sometimes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did you play any sports in high school?
I did. I played basketball, which I think was another thing that might have kept people away, just because that's a little bit more of an aggressive sport. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if people thought of me as, Karen's the basketball player.
That's it. I mean, my wife's 5'9", and I mean, there are obviously taller people than her, but generally speaking, throughout the day, she's the tallest woman I see anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
she would say that through high school, like everybody was sort of a little like, you know, it was hard to find a guy that was taller than her. And they did seem kind of like, you know, a little scared to talk to her and that stuff. I luckily have like no filter whatsoever. So I'm not tall and I was able to just like, just ignore that fact. But I mean, it's not lost on me that, and I'll tell you where I was somewhere giving a talk and I was trying to move from room to room and a bunch of people kind of descended on me as they were like, you know, Karen, in a diabetes setting, I'm like the Beatles. If I walk outside, nobody knows who I am. But in that thing, like people were kind of flocking and we were taking a lot of pictures. And at one point I kind of had like grown women on either side of me. And I thought I should have married someone shorter. I feel so tall right now. And I feel so like it's a bizarre thing and not something I normally think about, but I felt more masculine. I felt like, you know, like seriously. Anyway, I don't know. It just occurred to me. We are so far away from the fact that you have diabetes. So this is your fault for being delightful. You're a unicorn as far as your attitude goes. You're a doctor and we're in the Air Force. So there was too much to talk about. So let's go. So I'll bring it back to diabetes because we should probably talk about it a little bit. Diagnosed, it was out of nowhere. Do you start with MDI? Do they give you a pen? Do they give you a pump? Does anybody talk to you about CGMs or sensing technology, anything like that?
Yeah, so I was really lucky. So one of my clinical skills instructors in medical school was an endocrinologist. So she was one of the people that like taught me like about the physical exam, like how do we like talk about patients and think about clinical judgment. She was kind of like one of those types of teachers. Mm-hmm. She was an endocrinologist, and I texted her basically immediately once I found out what was going on. And while I was in the hospital, because I had to go in the hospital eventually because I was in DKA when they diagnosed me, mm-hmm. She got me hooked up with an endocrinologist almost immediately and a diabetes educator. So I had like immediate follow-up coming out of the hospital. Did MDI while I was at the hospital. So they started me on, you know, long acting. I was on Glargine. I was basically on Lantus, you know, the short acting with meals. I was on way too much coming out of the hospital, but that's okay. The only reason why I knew was my roommate at the time, her boyfriend was also a type 1.
Wow.
So he had just been transitioning. I can't remember if it was from G4 to G5 or G5 to G6.
It was 3 years ago?
It was, yeah. So
it was G5 to G6 probably?
Yeah, I remember I had to wear them for, you know, you had to, what was it? Yeah, I was changing it every 7 days.
Mm, yeah. Well, yeah, I think the 5 was every 7 days for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that sounds right. Mm-hmm. So I was really lucky because he found out immediately what was going on. And he's like, I have all these extra Dexcoms because I'm on the new Dexcom. Take them. Here's how to put it on. Here's how to make it work.
Oh.
So I got out of the hospital and basically was on Dexcom almost immediately, which helped me find out that my insulin was way too much. I had to eat like 2 pieces of toast, like in peanut butter before bedtime in order to avoid going low.
Okay.
And then I had immediate follow-up basically right out of the hospital, which was helpful. And I think I got the Omnipod that had to have been like less than 3 months. So I got it really quick.
Wow. Yeah, that is fast. So you were in the very beginning, a little too much basal. You were feeding the insulin, basically trying to keep yourself up. The CGM helps you see it. And so you have a CGM pretty early on.
Yeah.
So you get to see the impacts of your insulin, of your carbs and everything, and make good decisions from there. Do you take to it well, or did you struggle with it? Are you still struggling with it? Are you doing great? Like how did that part go?
I think I took to it well. I think I was kind of in a state of mind where I was in this fight and I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I had my fighter brain on. Mm-hmm. And I think I took to the technology well in terms of kind of, I'm like, okay, I can see what this all is. I think I learned how to figure out the Omnipod really well. I think my medical knowledge definitely helped because I could understand, you know, like I needed to take insulin. I could see the effects on my blood sugars. I didn't really start getting, I think, understanding like pre-bolus and things like that until a couple of months later. But my first initial A1C after I started everything and kind of got going, we got it. I mean, we got it down really immediately. I think my first A1C back in the office was a 5.3.
Okay.
So whether that was from
Some honeymoon
lows or whatever, but I also found your podcast very quickly.
Oh,
I did. Yeah. I just Googled around and somebody had mentioned, oh, you should look up podcasts. And I was like, okay. So I like went on the internet and eventually found your podcast and started listening to it. I was like, oh, like Omnipod. I'm like, I have an Omnipod. And that I learned to pre-bolus from you. And then my endocrinologist is like, yeah, you should pre-bolus. Like that will help and avoid some like post-meal spikes. And so I think with all of that, I think I got a really good understanding of, how to use insulin, feel confident to make adjustments to the system on my own, learning what like the insulin to carb ratio was, what does sensitivity factor mean. I think I all took to that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think it was just based on my personality that I was, this is my life. I have to figure this out. I'm going to figure this out. I can figure this out. And I feel like I did that.
It sounds like it for sure. Also, there must be a little bit of professional pressure too, right? Because you can't, like, how are you going to be a doctor who can't take care of their diabetes?
Right. I will say, nobody's ever put that pressure on me, but I can definitely.
Oh, I don't think anybody put it on you, but you had to think about it, right? Like you're going to be a fraud if you can't do that.
Right.
Like
I'm a perfectionist too, which doesn't help.
No, that I didn't know, but I would have guessed that way if you would have asked me. So I don't know why exactly. It just, what does that mean though? Perfectionist. Does it mean everything in your house is exactly where it's supposed to be and we take our shoes off at the door? Or when you get into a project, you finish it well, you do it right? Like where does that touch your life?
So I think it definitely, when I do something, I want to do it to the best of my ability. Sometimes, and ultimately, if I do end up finishing something, it's a very good product. But sometimes it can prevent me from starting things when I anticipate that it's not going to be a successful outcome. So that's the bad side of it. My house isn't perfect, but when I go and complete a task, I always want it to be at the end product to always be at the highest that it possibly could be. And if it's not, then sometimes in my mind, I'm like, well, it could have been better, even though it was good.
You're not going to treat your patients that way, are you, Karen? Like, oh no, too late for you. Forget it.
It's mostly for myself. I'm like, oh, I didn't do a good enough job. But sometimes good enough is good enough. Like perfect isn't, always like you don't need to achieve perfection to be good enough.
You don't have to explain that to me. I have a motto. If you set the bar low enough, you'll never trip over it. And everything seems like a success.
Exactly.
I put my socks on. Yay!
Yay!
Smart
goals.
Yeah. Let's keep it simple. You know what I mean? Okay, so you get a CGM. I mean, eventually you ran out of free CGMs. You had to get it yourself. And and you've got a pump. Are you still using Omnipod?
I am. So I'm actually about to start Omnipod 5 here in a couple of weeks.
Oh, look at you. Nice. So you're going to go automated, which is, I think, a great decision. Especially so where you're at right now in your training, you're in the hospital now, right? Working, aren't you?
Yeah, I do. I do a mix of things. So where I'm training in my family medicine program, we do a mix of inpatient medicine, so hospital medicine, and then outpatient office medicine. So my first year of my training, I did a lot more inpatient hospital medicine. So I did all my rotations in the hospital on like a normal medicine floor. I rotated through the pediatric emergency room and pediatric inpatient team. I did adult emergency room, adult medicine, 2 intensive care units. What else did we do? Those are the big rotations that I did during my first year. And now Then I'm in my second year. I think about half my time is in the hospital and half my time is in the office doing like my continuity clinics.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any trouble being on your feet all day, or are you pretty good at handling that?
Sometimes if it's like a really more active day, and this is where I'm hoping the automated part can help, struggling if you, for some reason, the day becomes more active, having to deal with some lower blood sugars if we've been on our feet for a long period of time, like on rounds or something, that can be a struggle from time to time. I haven't had as much issues during clinic because I feel like I have a little bit more control of things. But it can be that way when you go a longer time without eating because you're, rounding with your attending, or, for some reason the day becomes a little bit more active than you were anticipating. But I just generally try and carry like glucose tablets with me in that type of instance. And really, if it comes to the point where I'm like, I'm low, I need to sit down, I always have people who are willing and more than able to step in to help, to allow me to do what I need to do to fix something, if that ever were the case.
That's excellent. What made you want to come on the show?
I really love this show, and I feel like I kind of have a unique story, so I wanted to share my story. And I just hear so many people come on here, and I know I've found what other people say. I always might hear a phrase that I pick up, and I find that personally helpful in my life. And I really just wanted to come on to like share my story, to give back to the community, talk with you, and just, I don't know.
I'm delighted. I'm delighted that you like me, because you 100% feel like somebody when I was younger who would not have liked me. So I feel like I'm growing as a person, or at the very least.
Yeah, no, I've always liked you. I know some people I've heard, like when I listen to you on the podcast, people will, have comments and
once in a while, nothing too bad, but
I don't think so.
And so you hear my sarcasm.
Yes.
Yeah. Even though do you employ sarcasm in your life at all?
I don't think I have the gift of sarcasm, unfortunately.
It is a gift, Karen. It really is.
It is.
Yeah. Just so much intent and tone and phrasing. I don't know.
And it's funny too. Like sometimes it is really funny. I'm like, I wish I could be funny like that. But
my family doesn't think I'm funny at all.
Well,
can I tell you something?
That's too bad.
I'm going to say something that happened the other day to me. And I don't know if what this is going to sound like, if it's like going to sound like bull or not to people, but for my entire life, like the first time I remember this happening as an adult, I was maybe 18 or 19. It was during a heat wave, and we didn't have any air conditioning. So my friend and I, Mike and I, we bought a baby pool at the Kitty City. Does anybody remember toy stores? There was a toy store near us called Kitty City. We went down there. We bought this plastic baby pool. We brought it home. I think we took it to my house, filled it with water, brought out like a TV tray, like drug a television outside, put it on it, and we just sat in the damn pool all night to stay cool and watch TV. And we're watching Seinfeld, first run. And I don't know if do you know a lot of people who are honestly funny, and once you know them for a while, you'll realize like they run lines on people, or they'll use stuff over and over again, or like there's stuff they say. Like I have things I say sometimes, and if you don't know me, you wouldn't know that I would have said it 50 times in the last 10 years or something like that. My wife, like I can see the look on my wife's face. Like she's like, oh, he's going to launch into this one. You know what I mean? And so we're watching Seinfeld, and this thing that I've been saying forever just is happening in front of me on television. And I turn to Mike and I go, I swear to God, if I find out you're selling my ideas to people, I'm going to be pissed. And we watched very quiet, and he turned to me and he goes, you got to try to get into this somehow. He goes, that's literally your bit. He's like that. He's like, that's how you tell it. It's the beats, it's the tone. He's like that whole thing. Anyway, 2 nights ago, I'm scrolling on the, I don't know, whatever, one of those things. And I land on a Louis C.K. bit, and Louis telling his thing. And it's like word for word, a joke I tell like for years. And I thought, am I as funny as Louis C.K.? And I was like, because that guy obviously makes questionable decisions with his penis, but is really, really funny. And so do you know what Louis C.K. did? I don't want to say it in front of you, Karen. I feel like it won't go well. Do you know what he did,
I have
though?
no idea.
Oh, my God. All right. It turns out, Karen, that if you knew Louis and you were hanging out like in his dressing room after, I don't know, something, Louis might announce to the room that it is his intention to take himself out of his pants and handle himself, and you should leave if you want to. Apparently that was... Go ahead, laugh again, Karen. I didn't realize you were going to laugh. That was so nice. Do it again. Well, I'll get you to laugh again. Don't worry about it. And so, anyway, that's a horror, obviously. But the guy's he's a really funny comedian. And so anyway, so he's running this like bit on stage and this little thing I'm scrolling past, and it's like word for word. I'm like, I do this. Like, I do this thing. And I'm like, so my idea that I had like a few years ago and Louis' idea are very similar. Like, could I be a professional comedian? I was like, I got to quit this podcast and find out. You know what I mean? Like, this podcast is taking up way too much of my time. So I could like, although I probably make more money than a starting comedian. All right, maybe I can't afford to do that. But anyway, the point is, I don't know what the point is, Karen. I think the point is I think I'm funny. But my parents, my parents didn't. Oh, Jesus, Karen, you have no idea. My parents really did not think I was funny. And my family, like Arden and I laugh together. We have the same sense of humor, basically. Mm-hmm. But once somebody says I'm funny, she goes, no, he's not. It's so interesting. Like, she won't give me credit for it. Anyway,
yeah.
I think my point is that I think there are people getting away with being professional comedians, and they're funny, but they're not like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not all Dave Chappelle. You don't have to like Chappelle's humor to know that as far as a person who can deliver a story in a funny way, the man's he's like at the top of a class. You know what I mean? Anyway, do you like stand-up at all?
I don't listen to a lot of stand-up, no.
Have you ever been to a live show?
No, not at all.
Oh, you should try that. You should. You should. Even like we just did one. Who did we just do? Damn it! Why can't I remember what we just did? I had the COVID recently, Karen.
Oh no!
And I'm coming back out of it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it took its toll on me. Anyway,
what was the worst part?
The vacillating fevers.
Okay.
Like, oh my God, I'm dying. I'm so hot. Oh my God, I'm so cold. And they would happen in the middle of the night. You couldn't sleep. So like 11 p.m. it would start, and at like 6 a.m. you could fall asleep. And by then you were just laying in a pile of your own human sweat and just like going like, oh God, I can't believe it, but I'm actually going to go to sleep now. Then I'd sleep till like 9 a.m., wake up and make the podcast. And then like live a whole day. And then it just went over and over again. And then every time you think it's over, it's not over. And then it turned into bronchitis.
Nice.
Yeah. So we literally were sick for 2 months here.
Oh, and it just like, I feel like it bounces back and forth. Like,
oh yeah, we gave it to each other. And oh my God, we gave it to each other. Like, we needed antibiotics to get out of it. Like, it was just like a horror. And I think it's messed with me a little bit. I mean, I'm okay now, I think. But I do think that 6 months from now, when people are hearing the podcast come out, if they really pay attention, you might hear where I was sick while I was interviewing people a couple of times. Mm-hmm. You know, because I was just a little like, maybe a little slower or something like that. Anyway, you could be funny. Do you ever say anything that's funny, or are you ever funny by mistake?
Maybe from time to time. I can't think of anything funny to say like off the top of my head, but I think maybe within my group of friends, like amongst my like friends that are also doctors, I mean, we have things that we say that we think are funny, but if anybody was listening to our conversation, they'd be like, what the heck are they talking about? Or they might think we're super nerdy or lame or gross. I don't know.
I would love to know if you're actually funny, or if you all just have the same bad sense of humor. I'd love to be a fly on a wall in that room.
Yeah, to hear what we're joking about.
Yeah, if you want to see a funny television show, somebody should pay Arden and I to watch other people to see if they're funny or not, because we would be funny and horrible to them as we were judging them. Anyway, John Mulaney, I just popped into my head. I saw John Mulaney live recently.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm telling you, like, I think stand-up, like, recorded, like, on Netflix can be, like, I think it's a little duller on television than it is live. So anyway,
I mean, I feel like that's the same thing with music. It's always better live.
Oh yeah.
Because you're there and you're in the moment, you're with the energy, you're with the people, like it's just better.
Seeing a movie is the same way, right? Like you just like being
Yeah.
around a bunch of people, you can feel like you can feel each other in the room, you know? So
Right.
anyway, Mulaney was funny, but I don't know, Karen. I don't know where we got, how we got here. What do you, I appreciate you wanting to come on and I want to like highlight what you said a moment ago about just picking up tidbits from other people's conversations. I think that's a super important part of why the podcast helps people or why they like it or whatever, that you can't just like you just can't expect to interview like 10 people and get all of the information out that someone needs. You're always going to be missing something. Like Jenny and I recorded a show the other day that just went up and it was, we did ketones. Thank you. Jesus. I'm the worst person to tell you what's going on this podcast, but I'm so far like ahead of where you guys are sometimes. Like my head's not there, but it was Isabel. She came through the community and she does such a great job of seeing what people like where people's gaps are and coming to me and saying, you really should do an episode on like this topic. And she's, I mean, as far as I can tell, she hasn't been wrong yet. So she came to me and she said, look, there's plenty of information about illness ketones, like spread through the pro tips and a couple of other places. She's like, but put it all in one place and let's make it part of the Bold Beginning series. And when she said that, I was like, but I already finished the Bold Beginning series. And at the end of it, I told everybody that's the end of the Bold Beginning series. And she goes, well, you're going to have to tell them that you were wrong. And I was like, all right. So, but just, that kind of stuff is super valuable too. Like targeted stuff where you just like, I'll listen for 45 minutes and understand how to clear my ketones out when it's over.
Yeah.
I still think that picking stuff out of conversations is a big part of this.
Yeah.
Why I try to have so many of them and why I hope that this is entertaining on some level because it's diabetes. And if you just came on and droned on about diabetes, I can't imagine anybody would listen to it, you know, like even if it was rock solid information. How do you find, this is interesting, you're still learning about medicine and you're still formulating your ideas about how to talk to people about it. How do you find the pro tips in those other targeted series? Were they valuable for you? Did you get anything out of it, even about how I talk to people about their medical stuff?
I think it's things that I probably maybe have gotten out of it. I mean, it's just always being open-minded to, like hearing what people say and knowing that, when people come in and they may be pushing back on you, trying to explore where that comes from, knowing that everyone kind of has like a story behind like where they're at with their health or something like that. In terms of like medical knowledge for like diabetes, because it's a very type 1 focus, I mostly deal with type 2s that are on oral or like once weekly injectable medications. Sure. I wouldn't say from like that standpoint it's necessarily been helpful, but I think definitely from the perspective of just like understanding people and where they're coming from, it's definitely helpful to hear like people's stories and the experiences that they have that have colored their experience with the medical system. It's having a better understanding that people come from different places, and most of the time there's some level of like fear and misunderstanding and just wanting to hear where people are coming from so that I can understand them and maybe we can find a place where we can meet in the middle ground, where like there are things that are definitely medically indicated and I will let you know what those things are, but also noticing that things are a work in progress and you can ultimately get to the same place with time.
I think, wait, it's funny. You're not asking, but if you asked me, Scott, you've spoken to 800 people who have a medical condition, maybe more. And what do you think? I would tell you not to try really hard not to assume how somebody got to where they are, what they know, or what their expectation, and you shouldn't ever apply medical expectations to them because they might have different expectations for themselves. Yeah. And that, I think that'll end up being really helpful for you because I've done a handful of interviews with type 2s and overwhelmingly the story is I got type 2 diabetes. Somebody pushed a protocol on me. I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing, what was supposed to be happening, what I was looking for. I didn't even know what outcomes were hopeful, how outcomes were acceptable, like, what should I be shooting for? And then the doctor just looks at me, and if my A1C falls into some sort of a range, they go, everything's fine. And if it doesn't, they say, try harder or lose weight or exercise or something that's vague and maybe doesn't take into account what their situation is. Like, it's easy to say to people, like, just lose weight or just do this or whatever the thing you're going to say to them is, but it might not be easy to them. And it's very difficult for those people to speak up in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of what I've learned talking to people.
Yeah. I think what's hard too is our appointments they're just so short now.
Yeah.
So it's like almost like for me, like there's so many things that go into the management of chronic health conditions. It's not just, it's lifestyle and medicine and all these other things that, it could take a whole 15, 30 minutes appointment just to talk about lifestyle.
Well,
and there are certain, there are like lifestyle medicine doctors who may be able to focus a little bit more on that. But I think we all would love to have more of that time, especially in like primary care, to talk to patients about, those types of things in their lives that, what is impeding them from being able to achieve the outcomes that they want. But it's, we only have so much time. And I think that's something we all kind of deal with a lot as healthcare providers is we can always throw a medication at something, but sometimes the things that, the best way to deal with anything is to put the two together.
I think too, that I understand that the visits are short, but I think that gets met sometimes by physicians with like, look, I have X number of minutes of information to deliver, but I have this many minutes to do it in. There's not enough time, so it's not going to work out. But think about that. Think about it like this. Like, you listen to the podcast, right? Like, why do people listen to this and then do well with their diabetes? It's because I've figured out and made the assumption that and then tried it with my daughter and then came forward and said, okay, look, these are the t-shirt slogans you need to know to manage your diabetes. Is there more to it? There definitely is. But you need to pre-bolus. You have to understand the impacts of your food, glycemic index and load. You have to be fluid. You have to bolus for fat and protein. You shouldn't look at a high blood sugar and just go, oh, I hope this comes down. I'd rather stop a lower falling blood sugar than fight with a high one. Like, these sort of, like, I hate to say it, but they're t-shirt slogans that in the moment are like, oh yeah, my blood sugar is 300. I should want this to be down. Or you're like, well, how do I make that decision? Well, you have to learn to trust that what you know is going to happen is going to happen. Like, I went to great lengths to take something really complicated and make it simple enough that you can get a good launch into it. And then you start seeing some progress and some success, and it makes you want to learn more about it. And it makes you want to fine tune it more. And I think, Karen, I'm betting on you. I think there's a way to get people into that room in that limited amount of time, and you are smart enough to figure out what your t-shirt slogan should be to get them moving in the right direction. I'm hanging this on you. You said people didn't pressure you about something before. Okay. I'm pressuring you. I want this.
That's a lot of
Karen,
pressure.
you're my emissary in this field. Now get going. Get out there. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. And it makes me wonder, how can we do the same for other things that people deal with? Yeah. And I think there's something unique what this podcast kind of maybe reminds me of, or we do have these like things called like group medical visits, where it's like a group of people with the same thing who come together, and it's like a normal doctor's office done with a group. So I wonder if there's something unique to the fact that this is almost like a group experience of people who have the same thing as you, talking about what they do. And people just, I think as humans, we are, we're connected individuals. We live in societies, and maybe there's just something uniquely different about being in a group and our ability to receive and accept information, as opposed to when you're sitting in a doctor's office, which is can often be a power relationship where you are maybe feeling like the prey and the predator, or
no,
like,
I understand.
mom and
Yeah,
dad.
there's a hierarchy and you're at the bottom of it.
There's a hierarchy, yeah. And I wonder if there's just something uniquely different about being in a community of people who deal with what you deal with and our ability to receive and understand and implement information.
I pitched that idea to a hospital a few years ago. I was like, instead of bringing everybody in for 20 minutes, why don't you bring everybody in for 2 hours and put 20 people in the room? Yeah. And they said, well, HIPAA violations. And like, they argued with me. I was like, it's a great idea. Yeah. And it sounds like you guys might be doing something like that, which is smart. I do think the last piece of it, which is privacy, like you want to have a group, you want to have a group experience, but you want private. A lot of people want privacy too. I think that's why the podcast is helpful because you feel like you're talking to everybody who's listening to everybody, but you are in your ears and you're by yourself and nobody knows what you're listening to. But I think you can do it. Yeah. All right. Karen, I'm so sorry. I have to jump. Are you, I don't want to cut you off though. Make sure that you told me everything you want to tell me.
I think I did. I do want to, the one person I want to thank somebody. I do want to thank my husband for being so wonderful. I think he's a really big reason why I've been able to do all the things that I want to do. We don't get to live together because he's in the Air Force and stationed in a different place. But I think a lot of my calm and ability to be who I am today is because he's very much my personality type too. So whenever he hears this, I'm going to make him listen to it. I just want to say thank you to him because he could have just gotten up and left me when all this stuff happened. And he's always been my best friend and he didn't. And he helped me a lot.
Karen, I don't usually do personal shout outs in the podcast, but that was touching. Very nice. Well, yeah, way to be a good guy, man. And like not be a dick and not be scared. And you know what I mean? And stand and fight a little bit. Because I take your point. I ask people a lot, actually. People of like dating age. I was like, do you worry that this would kind of push people away from you or scare them or whatever? It does happen. There are plenty of people who are like, oh, you have what? Look over there. And then they're gone when you turn back around, And yeah, that's good stuff. Well, you obviously must really love you.
Yes. And I love him too very much. He's my best friend. And I think a lot of what he does for me and for a lot of people, goes without being thanked. And I just wanted,
well, that's so sweet.
I wanted to put that out there.
Hey, listen, let's give him a little ego boost too. Super sexy that he flies a plane.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you ever fly?
He flies drones.
Oh, wait, does he?
But yes.
Oh, wait, he's not up in the thing?
No, but he still wears a flight suit. So
I didn't know that. But is he a pilot? Like, I know he's a pilot if he flies the drone, but is he a pilot that, like, do you guys like pleasure fly together? Like, does he have a...
No, so he doesn't have his private pilot's license. And I'd be kind of a little terrified to go up in those small planes. They're the ones that always seem to kind of break on people.
All right. Well, there's the answer. She loves you, but not that much. She's not getting in a plane. Karen, this was really, really a treat. I appreciate you doing this. And I'm so sorry. I know we moved the time around a bunch of times, but you were really flexible and I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, this was really great. I've been looking forward to this, and thank you so much for letting me come on the podcast.
It's my pleasure. Seriously, get out there and find a different way to help people. Okay. And then call me back. Seriously. And then tell me what it is later. Like
I will try. I'll try and figure something out.
I'll try. Like, listen, buddy, I just need to bill some people. I got to buy a house. Leave me alone. Actually, I don't.
I got to pay off my loan.
Yeah. Like, listen, after we pay the $125 I owe Wake Forest, then we'll talk about it.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Wake Forest couldn't have cut. Never mind. They could have cut you a break. All right. Hold on 1 second for me. I, of course, want to thank Karen for coming on the show and sharing her story. And I'd also like to thank the Contour Next Gen Blood Glucose Meter for sponsoring this episode. You know who else sponsored the episode? Omnipod. Go to omnipod.com/juicebox to get started today. And don't forget contournext.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. Honestly, the show is sponsored by these two companies. That's why the recording exists. It's how the editing got paid for. It's how the hosting for the show exists. It's why you get the podcast. It's why it's free. So I really appreciate it when you support the sponsors. If you have type 2 or pre-diabetes, the Type 2 Diabetes Pro Tip Series from the Juicebox Podcast is exactly what you're looking for. Do you have a friend or a family member who is struggling to understand their type 2 and how to manage it? This series is for them. 7 episodes to get you on track and up to speed. Episode 860, Series Intro. 864, Guilt and Shame. Episode 869, Medical Team. 874, Fueling Plan. Episode 880, Diabetes Technology. Episode 885, GLP-1s, metformin, and insulin. And in episode 889, we talk about movement. This episode is with me and Jenny Smith. Of course, you know Jenny is a certified diabetes care and education specialist. She's a registered and licensed dietitian, and Jenny has had type 1 diabetes for over 30 years. Too many people don't understand their type 2 diabetes, and this series aims to fix that. Share it with a friend, or get started today. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.